Two major things have happened recently that on their own would each be a big deal for anyone on carnivore, eating beef. Put together, they tell a story I believe this community needs to hear before someone else explains it to you their way. One of them is happening on the ground in Texas right now, and it is already pushing beef prices to numbers we have never seen before. The other has been quietly building for years, involves some of the richest men on the planet, and connects to the first story in a way that genuinely surprised me once I started looking into it. By the end of this video, you are going to understand both and how both are pointing to a serious disruption in the beef supply we are having. Let's get straight into it. Now, this is really important for anyone eating beef, especially on carnivore. In early June 2026, the USDA confirmed something that had not happened in this country in 60 years. A new World Screwworm infestation was found in a calf in South Texas. This is a parasitic fly whose larvae burrow directly into the living flesh of warm-blooded animals through wounds as small as a tick bite. A single female can lay up to 3,000 eggs over her lifetime. Left unchecked, the larvae feed on living tissue until the animal is left with severe wounds, infections, or death. This parasite used to be a massive problem in the United States. At its peak in the mid-20th century, it was costing the cattle industry over $200 million a year in losses, back when that was an enormous figure. Ranchers at the time described having to physically check every single animal for open wounds at least twice a week, riding out across vast open land during the hottest parts of the year when the flies were most active. On large operations where cattle were not seen routinely, that was nearly impossible. The US eradicated it through a clever program in the 1950s and 60s. Two USDA scientists figured out that female screwworms mate only once in their lifetime. So, flooding an area with sterile males caused the population to collapse on its own. It worked. The entire country was declared free of it by 1966. And the US did not stop there. Over the following decades, it spent hundreds of millions of dollars pushing the parasite further south through Mexico and Central America, all the way past the Panama Canal by 2004, maintaining a biological barrier thousands of miles from American cattle. Keeping this parasite out was saving the industry close to $900 million a year in losses that simply stopped happening. That barrier held for 60 years. It broke in 2023. By the end of 2024, every Central American country had confirmed cases. By late 2025, it was 70 miles from the US border in northern Mexico. And in June 2026, it crossed into Texas. Here is why the timing matters so much. This did not land on a healthy cattle industry. As of early 2026, the total US cattle herd stood at around 86 million head, the smallest since 1951. The breeding herd, the cows that determine future supply, is at its lowest point since 1961. Years of drought forced ranchers to sell off breeding stock just to survive, and that kind of damage takes years to undo, not months. The result is what you have probably already felt at the grocery store. Ground beef hit a record price this year, somewhere around $6.70 to $6.90 a pound, the highest since records began in 1984. Tyson Foods has already announced the closure of a major beef processing plant, citing an acute shortage of cattle, and is projecting an operating loss in its beef division running into the hundreds of millions of dollars this year. Economists at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas are projecting prices to keep climbing even without a full-blown outbreak, and the language being used is that tight supply and elevated prices could last through the rest of this decade. So, that is first update. A parasite the US worked for 60 years to keep out is back, at the exact moment the cattle herd was already at its weakest point in 75 years. On its own, that is already a big story for anyone who relies on beef the way we do. But here is where it gets bigger than a parasite, as the billionaires come into play. While American cattle ranchers have been dealing with drought, shrinking herds, and now a flesh-eating parasite, something else has been happening quietly in the background, and once you see it, it is hard to unsee. Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States, not the largest cattle rancher, the largest owner of farmland, period. We are talking somewhere around 270,000 acres spread across more than 15 states, much of it acquired through a network of shell companies that made it difficult for years for anyone to even figure out who was actually buying the land. One of his potato operations alone is reportedly large enough to be seen from space. Now here is the part that to me is the actual story. At the same time Gates was quietly becoming the biggest farmland owner in America, he was also pouring tens of millions of dollars into companies building alternatives to real beef. Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, early backing for lab-grown meat companies that eventually became Upside Foods. These are companies whose entire business model depends on people eating less real beef and more of whatever they are making in a bioreactor or an extrusion machine. And in 2021, in an interview with MIT Technology Review, Gates said something that I think every person in this community should hear in his own words. He said that all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef. And when asked how realistic that actually is, given that most people genuinely like the taste of real meat, his answer was not that the product would simply win on its own merits. He talked about people getting used to the taste difference, and he talked about using regulation to shift demand. Not consumer choice, regulation. Sit with that for a second. The largest private farmland owner in America is also one of the loudest voices telling rich countries they should stop eating real beef, and he is on record saying that government policy, not just market preference, might be needed to make that happen. And he's not alone. Jeff Bezos committed $100 million through his Earth Fund specifically to build research centers focused on replacing conventional meat with plant-based, fermented, and lab-grown alternatives. Bezos and Gates have both backed a company making meatless patties out of fungus. And if you look at the largest institutional shareholders of Beyond Meat, you will find BlackRock and Vanguard near the top of that list. The same two asset managers that sit near the top of basically every major company on earth. Meanwhile, on the ground, the actual cattle herd in this country is at its smallest size in 75 years. The cost of running a cattle operation has gone up by over $200 per cow in just 5 years. Generational ranching families, operations that have been on the same land for 100 years or more, are being squeezed out. Not necessarily because someone is forcing them off at gunpoint, often it is simpler than that. The land gets sold, sometimes to a buyer who has no real interest in running cattle on it at all, and one more piece of America's beef producing capacity quietly goes offline. I am not going to tell you exactly what to think about all of this, but I will ask you the same question I asked myself when I first started connecting these pieces. Is it a coincidence that the people investing the most money in convincing rich countries to stop eating real beef are also, separately, becoming some of the largest owners of the very land that beef would be raised on? I will let you sit with that, because it gets worse before it gets better. And before we move on, I want to bring this back to the human level for a second, because it is very easy to talk about acreage and billion-dollar figures and lose the actual people involved. Almost every rancher you talk to today knows someone in their own family or their own community who has gone broke trying to hold on to land their family worked for generations. Getting a ranching operation to a fourth generation is genuinely rare. Something like 1% of operations make it that far. And the people who do make it are not asking anyone for sympathy. They are simply trying to keep doing what their grandparents and great-grandparents did on the same land, raising the same kind of animal, while the rules of the game keep shifting underneath them in ways that have nothing to do with how well they raise cattle. As we are about to enter the most crucial part of the video, just hit that like button and press that lonely subscribe button as well. Here is the part that made me genuinely uncomfortable when I went deep on this. Because while the billionaires are arguing about the future of meat, there is something happening to the meat that is already on shelves and on restaurant menus today, right now, that most people have no idea about. It has a formal name in the industry: mechanically enhanced beef. Here is what that actually means in plain language. When cattle herds shrink and beef becomes expensive to produce, which is exactly what is happening right now, processors face enormous pressure to make cheaper, lower grade cuts look and feel like premium ones. The solution the industry landed on is a machine that uses dozens of tiny needles to inject fat, marinade, or other solutions directly into the muscle tissue of the meat after slaughter. The needles break up the muscle fibers and push fat or other substances into the interior. What was a tough, cheap cut suddenly looks marbled, feels tender, and can be sold at a premium price. There are entire commercial product lines built around this. Brands using this process inject standard beef with emulsions of beef fat or canola oil to mimic the appearance of expensive, heavily marbled Wagyu. Sold to restaurants as an affordable alternative, often with the diner having no idea what they are actually eating. There is even published research showing that this kind of processing, specifically injecting pork back fat into beef, creates a detectable off flavor that trained tasters can identify, but the average person cannot. On packaged meat in grocery stores, the USDA does require a label disclosing that the product has been mechanically tenderized, along with cooking instructions specifying minimum internal temperatures. But at restaurants, that same disclosure requirement does not have to apply. The steak you order at a nice restaurant can legally be enhanced this way, and the menu does not have to tell you anything about it. And it does not stop there. There have been investigations showing processors injecting potato starch directly into beef, both to make it appear leaner and to increase its weight before it is sold by the pound. There have been recordings of food company executives privately expressing discomfort with what their own companies sell to the public while publicly defending those same products. There are drugs used in pork production in the United States that are banned in over 150 other countries. There is also a more recent example that a lot of people lived through directly. During the early supply chain disruptions a few years back, there were entire stretches of beef country, ranching regions, where grocery stores and restaurants simply had no beef on the shelves. Not because the cattle did not exist somewhere in the country, but because the supply chain itself, the processing and distribution system that almost all beef funnels through, had become so centralized that a disruption anywhere in that chain meant empty shelves everywhere downstream, even in places surrounded by cattle. I want to be careful here because I am not saying every piece of beef you buy is laced with something sinister. Most of it is not. But the point is this: even before you get to the billionaire farmland story, even before you get to the screwworm outbreak, the meat supply already has these pressures built into it, and they all point in the same direction. Cheaper inputs, lower quality, less transparency, and a centralized supply chain that a single shock can disrupt nationwide. Now overlay that with a shrinking herd, a flesh-eating parasite, and the wealthiest people on earth actively funding alternatives to real beef while quietly buying up the land it would be raised on. Does that still feel like four unrelated stories to you? Or does it start to look like one story told from four different angles? Before moving to the ultimate revelations, we have a humble request here. Become our Patreon. Helping us create more of such informative content, subscribe to one of our membership plans on Patreon and unlock a lot of special benefits as well. Visit patreon.com/Carnivore Squad. The link is also given in the description. Okay, so where does all of this leave us, practically speaking, as people whose health depends on real beef? First, on the screwworm and price side. The USDA response is real, and the strategy that worked 60 years ago is being deployed again, with quarantine zones and sterile fly dispersal already underway. But the new sterile fly production facility being built in Texas will not be fully operational until 2027, which tells you the timeline is the genuine risk here, not the science. Combine that with a herd that was already at a 75-year low, and the honest expectation from economists is that beef prices stay elevated for years, not months. Second, on the bigger picture, I am not telling you to panic about billionaires, and I am not telling you to assume every steak at every restaurant is full of additives. Most beef, especially from a butcher you know or a rancher you buy direct from, is exactly what it says it is. But I am telling you that the pressures pushing toward cheaper, lower quality, less transparent beef are real, they are documented, they have a 50-year history, and they are not going away on their own. So here is what I think actually makes sense right now and what I am personally doing. If you have freezer space, use it. Buying in bulk now, while you can still find good quality beef at a price that will look reasonable in a year, is just basic math given where prices are projected to go. Get comfortable with the cuts that mechanically enhanced beef tends to avoid because they are already flavorful and do not need to be artificially improved. Chuck roast, short ribs, oxtail, beef shank. These cuts are often cheaper, more nutrient dense, and far less likely to have been through any kind of injection process because frankly, there is no commercial incentive to enhance a cut that nobody is trying to pass off as premium in the first place. And the biggest one, build a relationship with a local rancher or butcher if you possibly can. When you buy direct, you are not just getting better quality and often a better price per pound. You are also voting with your actual money for the kind of food system that keeps producing real beef from real animals raised on real land. Every dollar that goes to a small rancher is a dollar that did not go toward the alternative being built, quite literally on the land next door. And the more this community supports the people actually raising cattle, the harder it becomes for any of this to play out the way the worst case version suggests. One more practical thing, when you are buying packaged beef, get into the habit of actually reading the label, specifically looking for words like enhanced, marinated, or solution added. If a label tells you the product has been mechanically tenderized or contains an injected solution, that is your sign to either skip it or at least know what you are actually working with. And when you are eating out, do not be afraid to ask. A simple question like whether the steak is enhanced or contains any added solutions is a completely reasonable thing to ask a server, and a place that sources real, unprocessed beef will usually be happy to tell you so. So that is where things stand. If this opened your eyes to something you had not connected before, share it with someone in this community. Subscribe if you want me to keep following this story as it unfolds. And tell me in the comments, does this change how you think about where your beef comes from, or were you already there? I want to know where our community actually stands. See you in the next one.